As Kamala's campaign hemorrhages support in the final days before the election, as she loses support among men and religious voters in particular, in the crucial state of Pennsylvania in particular, Kamala has decided that the key to turning her campaign's messaging problems around is to trot out a cross-dressing spokesman who goes by the name Erotica the drag queen. Can't make this stuff up. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Cynthia Erivo, who I'm told is an actress, is starring as the bad witch, the wicked witch, in Wicked. And she is furious that a fan of hers made a poster for the movie. She's furious. It's a racism. It's erasure. It's discrimination. It's all of the things. What is the Wicked controversy? We'll get to it in a moment. First, I want to tell you about Lumen. Go to lumen.me, use code Knowles. It is tough to prioritize your health, especially if you're not sure where to start. That is why I love Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It is a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. All you got to do is breathe into your Lumen. First thing in the morning, you will know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. What sets Lumen apart is its ability to understand you on a personal level. It takes your unique metabolic data and crafts a personalized nutrition plan for that day, tailored to your body's needs and goals. Breathe into it before and after workouts and meals and gain real-time insights into your body's metabolic response. I think this technology is absolutely fabulous. You can wake up in the morning, you just breathe into it. It is Luddite-proof, it is Michael-proof, and you just get all of these valuable information right there on your phone. Takes all the guesswork out of it. If you're not the most, nutritionally inclined, it takes all the guesswork out. It's really fabulous. If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S. Get 15% off your Lumen, Lumen.me. Use code Knowles for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Speaking of racism and bigotry and the same tedious old playbook that we hear ad nauseum from the left, this is pretty much what the Kamala campaign has been left with in the final dozen days before the election. The last salvo that the Kamala campaign is throwing out there is that Trump is a Nazi. So they are trotting out John Kelly, who is Trump's former chief of staff, who hates Trump, and they've been bickering for quite a long time now. John Kelly has given an interview with the New York Times and the Atlantic, arguing that Trump is a fascist. Trump would rule, if he were elected president, as a dictator, and that Trump admires Adolf Hitler and would tell John Kelly how much he loved Hitler, but it's all secret. John Kelly doesn't have any proof of this, any evidence whatsoever. But nevertheless, he says you really have to believe him. He's super duper serious. To put this in perspective, even Mark Esper, who is Trump's former Secretary of Defense, who hates Trump, who's been campaigning against Trump, who wrote a book about how much he hates Trump, he went on CNN, which hates Trump, and was asked about it. Mark Esper shot down John Kelly's suggestion.
Were there ever any incidents, Secretary, that you have not previously spoken about in which you heard Donald Trump use similar language or refer to American military personnel in a derogatory fashion?
No, not along the lines that John Kelly and others have outlined.
Yeah, he hasn't. You see right there, the Chiron, the Atlantic. Trump praises Hitler. Yeah, I don't think so. Voters are not exactly buying this. Even CBS News came out and was interviewing people about this bombshell, October surprise, explosive allegation. Trump loves Hitler. Here's what the voters have to say.
Did he run this country as a dictator the 4 years he was in? Absolutely not. No wars. The economy was absolutely incredible. Everybody's making money. He wasn't a dictator then. Why should you be a dictator now?
It's a great point. This is one of the clearest ways to shoot down John Kelly's suggestion that Trump would be a dictator. Well, you say, well, he already was president. He wasn't a dictator. Kind of wish he were a little bit more of a dictator, actually. He might have been able to get more stuff done, but he very much respects our constitutional system. we have the proof. He was in office already. So why would that be different now? And then I think the clearest evidence that Donald Trump is not a Hitler-loving fascist dictator. There is a town in Israel named after him. I think a lot of people didn't know this. There's a town in Israel. It's called Trump Heights. Benjamin Netanyahu announced the name of this town and with a big Trump Heights sign right behind him. So John Kelly, with no evidence whatsoever, who's had an axe to grind with Trump for years, comes out and says, Trump secretly loves Hitler. The state of Israel comes out and says, Trump is so great to the Jews, we're going to name a town in Israel after him. Who do you believe? I tend to, on an issue like that, I guess I would tend to believe all of the evidence of my eyes, the historical record, and the state of Israel. I guess that's on that particular issue. The Kamala campaign needs to try better stuff. Unfortunately for them, they don't have better stuff. The best they can muster now is, this is almost too rich for parody. Kamala Harris's deputy press secretary, specifically in the state of Pennsylvania, this crucial battleground state with a lot of religious voters, a lot of Catholics. She has a deputy spokesman there who is a public crossdresser. I'm not revealing any private sins. This is a man who posts obscene quasi photos and videos of himself as a crossdresser who goes by the name Erotica, the drag queen. I'll spare you the videos and most of the pictures that are going around social media. This is yucky and undignified and probably is not going to help Kamala in Pennsylvania. It's probably going to hurt her. If anything, the trans issue, the drag issue has really been tough on Democrats. Democrats are running away from it. Colin Allred, who's running for Senate against Ted Cruz in Texas, he is very pro-LGBT, very pro-trans. He's now reversing his positions. We'll get to that in a little bit. He's trying to run away from that issue in Texas. We know that the trans issue, the transgender bathroom policies in particular, helped flip Virginia, which is usually a blue Commonwealth, flipped it red. It got Glenn Youngkin elected there, helped Ron DeSantis win re-election by a huge margin in Florida. This is a losing issue for Democrats. It's a winning issue for Republicans. But beyond the general yuckiness and indignity of it all, there is a more tangible political danger to all of this degeneracy. And the more tangible political danger is that sin darkens the intellect. The chief reason you shouldn't sin is because it offends God. And the secondary reason you shouldn't sin is because it could lead you to hell and force you to forfeit heaven, which has been offered to you by God. But even, let's say you're not that religious, you don't think about these things, you're agnostic, whatever. A really tangible political reason that you should not sin is that when you sin, you become really stupid. You do things that are irrational, that are crazy, that are humiliating, that a person in his right mind wouldn't do. Like dress up like being a man and dressing up like some female actress and posting this all over social media when you want to have a serious career in politics. That's just a crazy thing to do. That's irrational. But sin darkens the intellect. And there's a scriptural basis for this, which is in St. Paul's epistle to the Romans. If you're religious, maybe you've heard this before, but even if you're not religious, this probably will resonate with you because it's just so naturally true. It's so obviously true. St. Paul writes, "For although they knew God, they did not accord him glory as God or give him thanks. Instead, they became vain in their reasoning, and their senseless minds were darkened. While claiming to be wise, they became fools. Therefore, God handed them over to impurity through the lusts of their hearts for the mutual degradation of their bodies. God handed them over to their undiscerning mind to do what is improper." That's just empirically true. These people who might be intelligent, they might have high IQs, they become vain in their reasoning. How many people do we know who are Ivy League professors, who are very fancy credentialed scientists, who are vain in their reasoning, who come to all sorts of crazy conclusions because of sin because they give themselves over to wrath or lust, especially, or pride. I think of the scientists who during the COVID lockdowns wrote that letter. Many scientists wrote this letter saying, hey, you got to lock down, you got to cancel Christmas, you got to cancel funerals, you can't go see your loved ones as they're dying, but you should go riot for George Floyd. Because there was a big letter, it said, because white supremacy is a public health crisis that predates and contributes to COVID-19. That's crazy. That's vain reasoning. That is taking whatever ability you had to reason to some absurd end. While claiming to be wise, they became fools. God handed them over to impurity through the lusts of their hearts for the mutual degradation of their bodies. These people, they lust after these things, and they're given away to their passions, and they degrade themselves. You think of someone like this press secretary or like Sam Brinton, the nuclear waste czar, who clearly is a pretty intelligent person, has raw intelligence, has made it pretty far in his career, but he degrades himself by dressing like a woman, wearing stilettos, and then stealing women's clothes at multiple airports. Their minds are undiscerning and they do what is improper. It's really bad. It's bad for these people individually. It's bad when these are the people who rule us, because no matter what their raw IQ is, no matter what fancy college they got into, they can become fools through sin. Their intellects can be darkened, and they can make really poor judgments. And when it's just involving their own personal lives, it's sad enough. But when they are in positions that require their judgment for our good to govern our country, that's really dangerous for everyone. The short version of that is there's a reason we shouldn't elect. Okay. It's not just because it's yucky. It's because they are irrational, and that's bad for our country. Now, when we want to get back onto a course of solid, good national policy, you got to check out Preborn. Go to preborn.com/Knowles. The libs are zealous for the blood of babies, going as far as supporting free abortions at the DNC. We've got to stand up to this evil. When you join forces with Preborn, the largest pro-life organization in the country, you are protecting the greatest victims in our society, babies in their mother's womb. Preborn's network of clinics is positioned in the highest abortion areas in the country. They've rescued over 300,000 babies. When a woman considering abortion searches to end her baby's life, Preborn is there. One ultrasound is just $28. 5 ultrasounds are $140. To donate securely, just dial pound 250, say keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Knowles. preborn.com/KNOWLES. I would also strongly encourage you to give in a big way to save babies. I personally support this organization. If you can, your tax-deductible donation of $5,000 will sponsor Preborn's entire network for 24 hours, helping to rescue 200 babies. To donate, dial pound 250, say keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.com/Knowles, preborn.com/Knowles. I mentioned Colin Allred, the Democrat, a former football player. He's a Democrat running against Ted Cruz in Texas, giving Ted a run for his money. The polls seem kind of tight. I don't think because he's a particularly good candidate or because Senator Cruz has been a weak senator. I think he's been a very strong senator. But Dems have poured a lot of money into Texas, and they poured a lot of foreign nationals into Texas through the open border. So it's a close race. Well, Allred is on the run right now. And he's on the run on one issue in particular. Senator Cruz has made it a point in a great campaign ad and during his debate with Allred to say, Colin Allred, a former NFL player, has consistently voted to force girls to compete against boys in sports. And this is unfair. This is dangerous. This is deeply unjust. And Colin Allred, who has been consistently pro-trans, pro-LGBT, pro-dudes in women's sports, is now running away from that issue and lying about his record.
So let me be clear. I don't want boys playing girls' sports or any of this ridiculous stuff that Ted Cruz is saying. Ted Cruz is lying about my record because he can't defend his own.
Hold on. Colin Allred is now saying, forget about what he's saying about Cruz. Cruz is lying. Okay. You're saying you do not want boys playing girls' sports. Okay, well, let's look at the tape. Luckily, the internet is forever. Here's a tweet from Colin Allred not so long ago. It says, Texas should be a place where our young people can be who they are, free from discrimination. This is yet another dark, shameful moment for our state as the GOP in Texas is more focused on attacking trans students than fixing the real problems we face. And what is the article he's posting here? It's from the Texas Tribune. It's about, here's the headline, Texas bill restricting transgender student athletes' sports participation. In other words, he's tweeting about the bill that says boys can't play women's sports. It's a law that would say girls have their own sports leagues and boys are not allowed to invade those sports leagues. Colin Allred says, all this is a dark, shameful moment. We need to stop attacking trans students. In other words, Colin Allred saying, we need to force girls to compete against boys in sports. And then you just look at his record on that bill and others. 2023, Colin Allred voted against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. Very simple bill, which would have blocked male athletes from competing in girls' sports in schools. He co-sponsored and voted for the Equality Act in June of 2023. And when the Democrats tried it the first time in 2019, and when they tried it again in 2021. The Equality Act would amend the 1964 Civil Rights Act to prevent, quote, discrimination on the basis of sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation. That bill would force girls to compete against boys in sports. And then he co-sponsored in March 2023 a resolution to recognize, quote, that it is the duty of the federal government to develop and implement a transgender Bill of Rights, which specifically would amend federal law to allow men to, quote, participate in sports on teams and in programs that best align with their gender identity. So he's repeatedly, not just 3 times, I count 5 times here, if you count the multiple times he co-sponsored the Equality Act. 5 times this guy has stated explicitly, I want to force girls to compete against boys in sports. And now this liar, this incompetent liar, Colin Allred, comes out in the final days of his campaign. He realizes this is a losing issue. He realizes it makes him look like a weirdo and a creep and someone without functioning faculties of reason. He comes out and he lies and he says, no, I don't want boys to compete in girls' sports. Okay, well, why did you vote for it 5 times then, Colin Allred? Does he think Texans are believing this crap? This is ridiculous. Not only are Texans not believing it, but the pro-LGBT lobby is not believing it. The Human Rights Campaign, which is that's the equality sign campaign. That was the one that initially tried to redefine marriage. And then when they got that at the Supreme Court, they realized they still needed to keep their employees in business and they needed to keep the money going. So they pivoted. They stopped being a redefined marriage group and they became a pro-trans group. The HRC tells The Advocate, which is a pro-LGBT magazine, quote, Congressman Allred needs to explain his comments in this ad. They simply don't square with what we know about his record. For years, he has supported our community, trans in particular, but LGBT, and worked to protect LGBTQ plus people from discrimination. All right, so you don't even just need to believe me here. This is one of those rare issues where the Human Rights Campaign, the most radical pro-LGBT group in the country, and The Advocate, the most prominent pro-LGBT magazine, and I, the guy who has spoken out pretty clearly about opposition to the trans movement, well, we agree. And what we agree is Colin Allred is lying about his stance and his record on boys and women's sports. Republicans need to keep up this pressure. This is a winning issue. Speaking of really great issues for Republicans, I was so elated last night when President Trump made a post on Truth Social that I have been hoping for and calling for, and many, I don't know if I would say many conservatives, but conservatives who have been tuned into a really important religious issue concerning the persecution of Christians have been talking about for months and months now, or longer. President Trump spoke up in defense of the Armenian Christians who are currently enduring an ethnic cleansing and potential genocide at the hands of the Azerbaijanis. Trump posted this: Kamala Harris did nothing as 120,000 Armenian Christians were horrifically persecuted and forcibly displaced in Artsakh, an historic homeland of Armenian Christians. Armenia, the oldest Christian nation in the world. Armenia, which became Christian before Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan legalizing Christianity in the Roman Empire. Armenia, a 2,000-year homeland of Christianity. horrifically persecuted, forcibly displaced in Artsakh by Muslims. Christians around the world will not be safe if Kamala Harris is president of the United States. When I am president, I will protect persecuted Christians. I will work to stop the violence and ethnic cleansing, and we will restore peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Absolutely beautiful. This is more moral clarity and historical sophistication and civilizational insight than we have seen probably from any president in my lifetime. And I know Trump's critics, they say all sorts of nonsense about him, and they call him a big dummy, and they say he doesn't know anything. This is sophisticated, and this is morally serious, more serious than we've seen from any other presidential candidate or president in my lifetime. And really, really important. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have allowed Armenian Christians, over 100,000 of them, to be displaced from their homeland. They've stood idly by while this happens. Trump says no. This is an extremely important issue. America is a Christian country. We were founded to be a shining city on a hill. We were founded by people who called themselves pilgrims coming over here on the Mayflower. Okay, we are the leader of the West. We're the leader of the world, but we're the leader of the West, which was once called Christendom, and we ought to stand with persecuted Christians. We ought to stand with persecuted people broadly around the world, and we do, but specifically Christians, because Christians are the most persecuted religious group in the world. It's not even close. And Armenian Christians have already faced a genocide at the hands of Muslim Turks, and they're facing an ethnic cleansing right now. And Trump is standing up for them. And that's a beautiful thing. And Harris is morally idiotic on the subject and incompetent. The Biden-Harris administration has been incompetent on foreign policy broadly. There's another amazing, amazing fact about Trump. We remember Trump restored peace to the Middle East, which is pretty wild. Trump, though, is not just even a partisan for one group over another group. We recall Trump has the support of many, many Christians, and he's made protection of Christians a priority. He also has Jews in his close family, and now he also has Arabs in his close family, because his daughter is married to someone of Lebanese Arab descent. So Trump, oddly enough, in his person, seems able to advance a diplomacy that we haven't seen. We saw that diplomacy during his first term. We haven't seen it in other presidential administrations. And we're seeing that now, some seriousness. He doesn't just say, we're going to boot back the Azerbaijanis and we're going to defend the Armenians. He says, we're going to restore peace and we need to protect the persecuted Christians. I wholeheartedly agree. Now, speaking of winning, you ought to check out Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app, use code Knowles. I'm going to tell you about Prize Picks, folks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is simple. It's fun. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. That's it. I know sometimes sports betting can get very complicated. This is very simple. It's just you, your sports acumen, and the potential to win up to 100 times your money. Also, Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. This is really key. If your player leaves in the first half, doesn't return, your picks are still live, which happened with the Nostradamus picks on Monday. Mr. Davies, how did it go?
It went fantastic, and congratulations to everyone who did that for Monday Night Football. And for you, Michael, you love Christmas, right?
I do.
Well, Christmas came early because Cooper Kupp is back in the lineup. Cooper Kupp, more than half touchdown tonight. There are 2 teams, but only 1 Kupp, and he is getting 1 touchdown. Count it, book it. Justin Jefferson, more than 85.5 receiving yards, or as you call it, Michael, fake headline Friday, an easy win. Book it. Aaron Jones, more than 69 rushing yards. He runs through traffic like Jacob in a Camaro. It's happening tonight. And finally, Sam Darnold, more than 14.5 rushing yards. He rushed for 35 against a better defense last week. 14.5, that's less than Trump is up in most states. Book it. Payout tonight, 11 to 1. $10 will get you $110. Or if you use the promo code, your $55 will become $605. Death, taxes, and Nostradamus picks for Thursday Night Football. You're welcome.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't have said that at all, actually. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Knowles. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Code Knowles on Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play 5. Prize Picks, run your game. Speaking of religious issues, you got Trump saying we're going to defend persecuted Christians who are facing ethnic cleansing. You got Kamala Harris, on the other hand, opposing religious exemptions in abortion. You have Kamala Harris, who is asked about her extremely radical abortion position, and she says she will not even discuss exemptions. She will, in effect, force Christians to violate their conscience and murder babies.
What concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example? Is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
To Republicans like, for example, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, who would back something like this on a Democratic agenda if, in fact, Republicans control Congress, would you offer them an olive branch? Or is that off the table? Is that not an option for you?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals.
No, I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. We're going to force nuns to perform abortions at Catholic hospitals, and that's what we're going to do. We have to. We have to. We have to force everyone to kill the babies, even against their conscience. This is extraordinarily radical. I did an interview yesterday. I'm not sure if it's out yet, but I was being interviewed. One of the hosts was a liberal interviewer, and he kept trying to bring the conversation about abortion to IUDs, which I was always told was a form of contraception. I said, why are we talking about contraception? He said, well, no, they can be abortifacients too, because they can permit the conception of a baby, but prevent the implantation. I said, okay, that's all really interesting. It seems to me more politically relevant to talk about how the Democrats right now are trying to legalize and have succeeded at legalizing abortion up until the moment of birth and even after birth, how they're weakening protections for babies who survive abortion and who are then left to die and won't even have their deaths reported on a medical room table, some cold table. I think it seems more relevant to talk about how Kamala Harris wants to force Catholic doctors, Christians in the medical industry to kill babies. And the reason I think it's more relevant to talk about that is that's the actual political issue right now. Nobody's talking about banning IUDs or whatever. I don't even really get what an IUD is. I don't know. I have 3 kids under 4. I'm not an expert on contraception. No one's talking about banning contraception or any of those things. The Democrats are talking about legalizing abortion even later in the term. The Democrats are talking about, and they're voting on enshrining a total right to abortion, quote unquote. Democrats, including the vice presidential nominee right now for the Democrats, are passing laws repealing protections for babies who survive abortion. So I don't know, it just seems like that's where we should be talking about it. And the liberal host, I won't spoil it, the interview will come out soon, but he basically waved the white flag and said, well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I don't want to think about that. I want to talk about, IUDs or whatever. Stop it. I don't care. I don't want to have to reason about this. And it doesn't even speak to his lack of education on the subject. It doesn't even really speak to his lack of intelligence. It speaks to the complete impermissibility of this issue for so many people, for anybody with a modicum of conscience and common sense. Nobody wants to be defending killing babies up until nobody wants to be defending forcing nuns and Christian doctors to perform abortions. That's just so deeply immoral in the minds of so many people. For Kamala to fall into this at the end of her campaign, it's just the latest in a string of really, really stupid campaign decisions that nobody wants to defend. They want to distract, but they don't want to defend. And they'll wave the white flag on that issue because they know it's indefensible. Okay, well, if abortion is indefensible in that clear way by the end of the term, why wouldn't that be the case 2 weeks prior, 2 weeks before that, or 3 weeks before that? Isn't it just wrong to kill babies? I think so. Certainly, isn't it wrong to force people to kill babies against their conscience? Seems to be. Speaking of crazed women, there's a woman named Cynthia Erivo about whom I knew nothing until the afternoon yesterday. Cynthia Erivo is an actress, I'm told, and she is playing the Wicked Witch in Wicked. Wicked, Broadway musical that came out about 20 years ago. I saw it when it came to Broadway. I was growing up in New York. It was a big hit on Broadway. Now they made a movie about it, and this woman is the Wicked Witch. So a fan of the show, and maybe a fan of Cynthia Erivo, posted a version of the poster where Cynthia Erivo's eyes are darkened out in a shadow. Cynthia Erivo goes on this tear. Cynthia Erivo posts on Instagram or TikTok, "This is the wildest, most offensive thing I've seen, equal to that awful AI of us fighting, equal to people posing the question, is your blank green? Is your what green? What was that? None of this is funny. None of this is cute. It degrades me. It degrades us. I'm a real-life human being who chose to look right down the barrel of the camera to you, the viewer, because without words, we communicate with our eyes. Our poster is an homage, not an imitation. To edit my face and hide my eyes is to erase me. That is just deeply hurtful." Whoa, man, is that what was going on? This fan of Wicked and Cynthia Erivo was trying to erase this actor? Oh no, the person just made the new poster look more like the original poster, because the original poster, her eyes were shadowed out by the brim of the hat, actually, which conveys certain meaning about the character, in which we don't really need to get into, but, the eyes are the window to the soul. Maybe this is telling something about the state of the wicked witch's soul. Maybe this tells you something about the deception of the wicked witch, or whatever. It doesn't matter. The guy was just making the new poster look like the old poster. Or the girl. I don't even know who it was who made this poster. And this woman, Cynthia Erivo, went on a tear about how this is erasure, this is degrading, it degrades us. Who is us? It seems like she's talking about some kind of racial politics, which the left always talks about today. On this huge tear. Why, man? Where did this come from? Where did this come from? This woman is real angry. I have a thought about that. I was listening to a great podcast on the Thomistic Institute, which then directed me back to read Thomas Aquinas about this, because Thomas Aquinas is right about pretty much everything. This woman's real angry. A lot of people, the left in particular, is really, really angry today. And anger can be good. Thomas Aquinas actually writes that the lack of anger is a sign that the judgment of reason is lacking. Anger can be good. When you see an injustice, you should become angry. When you see some little girl forced to strip down in a locker room next to some hulking dude, that should make you angry. When you see Azerbaijanis committing an ethnic cleansing against the oldest Christian country in the world, that should make you angry. Absolutely. Injustice should make you angry. But anger can be a very bad thing when it has no end and when it's disconnected from justice. When I think what's going on here today with someone like Cynthia Erivo, who flies off the handle because someone makes a nice little fan poster based on the original poster of this movie that she's in. I think that her anger is not a response to injustice. I think the anger comes first. And the total graceless response and the total lack of charity that we're seeing is just because Cynthia Erivo was already angry. I think the left is already angry. And they're just lashing out wherever they can, even when it's totally inappropriate. Like in the case of flying off the handle about a cute little fan poster. So why are they angry? St. Thomas Aquinas has a lot to say about this too. In the Summa Theologiae, Aquinas writes that the movement of anger arises from a wrong done that causes sorrow, for which sorrow vengeance is sought as a remedy. So anger comes from sorrow. And I think that the reason the left is so angry, why they yell and they scream and they shriek and they blow up their families and they commit violence and they just rend their garments and gnash their teeth, is because I think it's because they're sad and they're misunderstanding the source of their sorrow. People are sad today. I was discussing yesterday a famous study on happiness, came out of Yale, I believe, called the Paradox of Declining Female Happiness. It shows that over the last 50, 60 years, women's happiness has declined absolutely and relative to men. Both men and women have become less happy, but women have become especially unhappy. But everyone's become unhappy. And so many people today are on depression pills. Young people are on depression pills. Women, a huge percentage of American women are on depression pills, especially older women. We're unhappy. Why is that? Are we unhappy because someone made a poster of the movie Wicked? No. Are we unhappy because Donald Trump got elected? No. Are we unhappy because of racism? No, first of all, I mean, there's no such thing as this like white supremacy, patriarchal, structural injustice, racism, all the stuff that the libs talk about. But even if there were, their argument is this racism, this white supremacy, this patriarchy, this oppression, this fascism, this has existed from the beginning of our country. And we've made some progress, but not enough progress. So in any case, even by their own premises, people should be happier today because there's been at least a little bit of progress. Or they should be exactly as unhappy as they always were, but people are less happy. Why is that? I'm going to just speculate. I'm going to throw a dart in the air right now. I Googled Cynthia Erivo because I know nothing about her. And one of the first things you see on her Wikipedia page, she identifies as queer. Okay. If you look at people who identify as queer, especially people who identify as transgender, they're really, really unhappy. This is one of my arguments as to why we should not trans the kids, is because it coincides with anxiety and depression and high rates. And now the pro-LGBT side, the left argues, yes, this is because there's no acceptance. It's because of queer phobia or transphobia or this phobia or that phobia. My argument is no, the reason people who identify as queer tend to be sad is because they are living out of accord with reality. And when you deny reality, when you try to create of your own to live in, reality is going to continue to impose itself on you, and you're going to become frustrated by that. I think that's what's going on. And it's not just the people who identify as queer, it's all the people who have mistaken beliefs about nature and reality and who live against reality. I think of the feminists here. I think of the leftists. I think of all the people who seem so especially angry. I suspect that comes from a real sorrow, but the real sorrow is not caused by Trump. It's not caused by the patriarchal white supremacy. It's not caused by some stupid movie poster. It's caused by your stubborn insistence on living in contradiction to reality. And if you want to be less angry, then you got to try to be less sad. And if you want to be less sad, you got to try to be happy. And happiness, Aristotle tells us, is a rational activity done with excellence in accordance with virtue. We can know something about human nature. We can know something about what people are for. We can know something about what makes us happy. And you can ignore that, but it's going to make you really, really angry and make you lash out at your Republican uncle at Christmas, and it's going to make you lash out at your fans for an innocent movie poster. It's not going to give you a good life. In 4 days, speaking of movies, the decade's #1 grossing documentary is coming exclusively to DailyWire Plus. That is Right, Am I Racist? Starring Matt Walsh. It's arriving on Monday, October 28th. You will need a DailyWire Plus subscription to watch. Making a movie, getting it into theaters across the country is a monumental and costly endeavor. We are doing the work, as Matt tells us to do. We're doing the work, but we can't do it without your support. Head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code DEI for 35% off your new DailyWire Plus membership. That is dailywire.com/subscribe. Get ready for Am I Racist streaming exclusively on October 28th. My favorite comment yesterday is from, well, of course, the Drummers Workshop Norm's Music. It says, the guy who showed Trump how to work the fries at McDonald's is more competent than the media. I don't think that's quite true. I think the guy who showed Trump to work the fry machine at McDonald's is as competent as the media. He's competent, but the media are competent too. The media's job is to lie to you. The media's job is, or at the very least, we would say the media's job is to be the propaganda arm for the liberal establishment and the Democrat Party. And that often involves lying to you, though not all the time, but it often does. And they're very good at that. They've done a very good job at that for many decades. So they're as competent. The difference is the guy who works the fry machine is much more honest, and he's providing a much greater service for humanity than the media are. Speaking of queers, we're just talking about queers, aren't we? There is a bombshell article out, and it's based on a study about transing the kids. Does transing the kids make them happier? The headline, U.S. study on puberty blockers goes unpublished because of politics, doctor says. This doctor is Joanna Olson Kennedy. Now, Joanna Olson Kennedy is not conservative, doesn't seem to me, is not anti-trans. In fact, Joanna Olson Kennedy seems to be rather pro-transing the kids. And Joanna Olson Kennedy began this study in 2015 as part of a broader multi-million-dollar government project on transgender youth. This was to examine whether puberty blockers in kids that would then lead them down the trans rabbit hole would make them happier or less happy. And this follows an older Dutch study, which is the Dutch study is the one that's usually cited, which showed that puberty blockers improved well-being of so-called trans kids. And there are all sorts of problems with the Dutch study, which we've talked about on the show before. But this new study was going to be much better funded, much stronger, with far better methodological practices. And what did it find? The American study to date did not find a similar trend. Dutch study says that puberty blockers make the kids happier. The American study doesn't find that. This is according to the doctor behind the study, Dr. Olson Kennedy. Now, what does Olson Kennedy say? She says, look, the kids are in really good shape when they come in, and they're in really good shape after 2 years. So this woman runs the largest youth gender clinic at the city hospital, at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. So she is actively transing the kids. And even she can't say the puberty blockers make the kids happier. All she can say is, no, they don't improve because they're already so happy to begin with. Well, hold on, they're so happy to begin with. Why are they seeing you? They're so happy to begin with. Why did you say, just a little bit earlier, that you and your colleagues found that a quarter of the adolescents that you work with were depressed before treatment? Previously, you said they came in, they were on the brink of, and you assume that puberty blockers will make them happier. Now you actually perform the survey. You find the puberty blockers don't make them happier at all. Doesn't improve anything. So then you got to go revise your premise. You say, no, actually they were already very happy. Oh, no, well, so were you lying then or are you lying now? Why hasn't this study been published yet? Well, here's the kicker. I do not want our work to be weaponized, she says. It has to be exactly on point, clear and precise, and that takes time. Oh, you don't want it to be weaponized politically. Weaponized by whom? People who can read? People who are literate? You don't want it to be weaponized by the people who report on what your study shows, which contradicts what the left has been saying about puberty blockers, what you yourself have been saying about puberty blockers. Oh, you're suppressing your own study because your scientific findings contradict your political preferences. Okay, that checks out to me. This is not an anomaly. I gave a speech, I forget when it was, a year or two ago, where I said science is fake. This is one of the reasons why I would say science is fake. This is not an anomaly. This happens all the time. This, in fact, is how scientific studies are always conducted. Don't forget, this study is funded by the government. Science, I'm not saying that science can never come to correct conclusions. I'm not saying that empirical experiments can never show us something about the natural world. It certainly can. I'm saying science always exists within the context of politics because we live in polities. And the science very often is funded directly by the government. And even when it's not funded directly by the government, it's funded indirectly by the government because universities get funding and then the universities fund it. And even when it's not indirectly by the government, the scientists are conducting their experiments within political communities. So sometimes the scientists, frequently actually, they will suppress the results of their studies in deference to politics, or they'll tailor their studies to politics. I mentioned earlier, during COVID, you remember, I think I have it, yeah. During COVID, this is from CNN, over 1,000 health professionals signed a letter saying, don't shut down protests using coronavirus concerns as an excuse. During COVID, the scientists told us we had to stand 6 feet away from everyone and wear 17 different masks, and we couldn't go to people's funerals, we couldn't get married, we couldn't go to school, we couldn't go to church, we couldn't go to work, we couldn't see our loved ones as they were dying. We have to be as far away from everyone as possible, locked up in our little bubbles. Unless you wanted to go out with BLM and loot sneaker stores and burn down Minneapolis, in which case it was good to go out there. Because they said white supremacy is a health crisis, a public health condition that predates COVID and contributes to COVID somehow, totally implausibly. Don't go to your grandma's funeral. Do go burn down Minneapolis and rob a liquor store in the name of racial justice. What was the scientific basis for that? Nothing. There was no scientific basis for the distancing by 6 feet, as even the public health officials eventually admitted to us. That was political. The climate change alarmism, the notion that we're we're all going to be burned up and killed by the sun monster 3 years ago. I believe it was one of the more prominent predictions. The climate research, I'm not saying that there's nothing to learn about how the weather works and how the climate works. I'm just saying the climate research is being funded by and promoted by politicians. Al Gore's not a scientist. Scientists didn't make an inconvenient truth. Scientists don't run the United Nations. Scientists don't craft public policy. It's politicians who do that. Even, I'm thinking of with COVID again. You remember the scientific community had to go mum on the Chinese origins of the virus because it was politically incorrect. And so on and so forth. It's politics. Okay, that's fine. Well, then don't tell me I'm being unscientific when I point out a boy can't really be a girl. Because, by the way, your own research shows that. Not that you should need a study for it. Now, speaking of drugs, one little story I have to get to. This is a minor story, but I've been meaning to get to it. Joanna Knowles from the Daily Beast went on MSNBC to claim, without any evidence, that Trump is microdosing on drugs.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know that Donald Trump says he doesn't drink, but this feels like drunken behavior. I think he's probably microdosing, like his friend Elon Musk. It's astonishing behavior, and it's irrational. And if we're exhausted about this campaign, imagine how Donald Trump is feeling.
Okay, so maybe she's joking a little bit here. I don't know, maybe she's being serious. People have accused Trump of using uppers because he has so much energy. You know, again, no evidence of that. Even while the left uses uppers and they find in the Biden White House. I'm pretty confident Trump does not use drugs. And do you know why? Because Trump's drug seems to be winning. And I don't mean that just because I like him. I don't mean that in a flattering way, because he does win a lot, but he loses sometimes too. He goes bankrupt. He has to concede elections. But he then just keeps winning. He just stays in the fight, and then he has the art of the comeback. But what does Trump love to do? He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't seem to do any other drugs. What does he love? He loves business. He loves winning in business. What's his favorite hobby? Golf. He loves competing against people. When I go golf, I smoke a cigar. He doesn't do that. Even when he's bragged about, dating supermodels and things like that, even with the women, he loves winning. He loves getting the prettiest girl and beating out the guy to get the girl. And he loves winning, man. And that's good. That is, if our politicians are going to have any addictions, I hope that the addiction is to winning. Because it's how this guy has come back from seemingly impossible odds. Being prosecuted 4 times, threatened with imprisonment, shot in the head, nearly shot again, just within the last few months. Impeached twice, run out of office, all the rest. And he keeps coming back. And we'll see how it turns out. Looks like he's winning again. Okay. I am now so pleased to be joined by John Cooper of the band Skillet. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it, but you don't get to see it if you are not a member of DailyWire Plus, if you are not a member of the Chem. You need to go to dailywire.com, use code Knowles, KNWLES, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.
The question everyone in America is asking,
am I racist?
Make those moves.
Get a DailyWire Plus membership to see Am I Racist?
This is all I have. Did you want to?
I can help you guys out.
Yeah.
Go to amирacist.com and sign up now.
I've been told because I'm a white male, kind of at the top of the pile, how do I get down from the top?
I don't think you necessarily can.
How do we get past all the talk about racism?
We have to love each other.
Well, it can't be that simple. How do we get to a point of racial harmony? It's good to talk to you. We're still on a journey, all of us together.
I think you got some journeying to do.
Just talk to me about the statistics. We have an epidemic.
20 million crimes a year, 6,000, 7,000 hate crimes. No, there's no epidemic.
Why are we talking about statistics? This is not a matter of statistics.
Well, you asked me about the statistics.
Am I Racist? Coming to DailyWire Plus on October 28th. Rated PG-13.